Sister has been engaged multiple times but never got married, then made my wedding day miserable because I got married before her. Later she sent me an invoice for $5,000 worth of therapy fees claiming I caused her deep depression. So here is the story. I am 27F, and I recently got married to my fiancé Daniel, 28M. It was a beautiful day, and we were both so excited to finally be married. I had no idea that my sister Stephanie, 33F, would make this big of a deal out of it. She has been struggling with her love life for a while, and apparently, the fact that I got married before her is just too much for her to handle. Growing up, Stephanie and I had a complicated relationship, though I did not realize it at the time. She is 6 years older than me, and while we were close in some ways, Stephanie always had a habit of invalidating me. She was the golden child. She loved being in the spotlight, and I was more than happy to stay in the background. I was quieter and more independent, so I did not compete with her. I thought that kept things peaceful between us. Stephanie's love life has been quite the roller coaster, and it looks like she cannot break free from this pattern of failed relationships. She has been engaged several times before, but none of them resulted in a wedding. Her first fiancé was Mario, 35M, and they dated for a few years. They looked like the ideal couple at first, but their relationship eventually fell apart. Stephanie was heartbroken when it ended. I was there to support her. I listened to her rant about how Mario was to blame for everything. She kept telling him he was not ready to settle down, that he had changed after the engagement, and that it was entirely his fault the relationship did not last. Then there was Theo, 49M, who initially came off as a great guy. He was charming and funny, and they really clicked. For a bit, it looked like they were on the right track, but eventually, things just did not work out. Stephanie was crushed again, but this time, instead of blaming Theo like she did with Mario, she told me how unlucky she felt in love. She would say stuff like, "Why does this keep happening to me? I am just so unlucky. I always end up with the wrong guys." I tried to give her a different angle, suggesting it might be about timing or compatibility, but she was not having any of it. The most recent was Colin, 28M, who actually seemed like he might be the one. He was sweet, kind, and looked like a stand-up guy. They had a pretty solid relationship, and I was optimistic that this could work out for her. But after a year or so, they broke up. Stephanie was devastated once again, and this time, she said, "I cannot believe I invested so much into this. He was everything I wanted, but it just did not work out. Again, it was his fault, not hers." She kept saying things like, "Maybe I'm just not meant to be in a relationship, or I must be doing something wrong, but I don't know what it is." There was always an excuse, a reason why things did not work out, but never any real self-reflection or accountability on her part. It is hard for me because I have always tried to be there for her. I have supported her through everything. I have always tried to hear her out. But the more she opened up, the more I thought she was not making a genuine effort to change. She has been stuck in an endless loop of blaming everyone else for her relationship failures, ignoring the possibility that she should think about her own actions. Going into my wedding, I really expected Stephanie to be happy for me. I thought she would put aside her own struggles, at least for the day, and celebrate with me like any supportive sister would. I thought she would be happy for me. Instead, she acted like it was the worst day of her life. She barely smiled in any of the photos, spent most of the reception sulking in a corner, and left early without even saying goodbye to me. At one point, she mentioned to one of our relatives how difficult it was for her to watch her little sister beat her to the altar, as if my wedding was some sort of competition she had just lost. It was embarrassing and insulting, and I honestly thought she could not bear to see me happy. Instead of being there for me, she made everything about herself and her own feelings. Anyway, after my wedding, things took a weird turn. I started getting these really long texts from Stephanie, full of passive-aggressive comments about how I would ruin her life by getting married before her. She kept saying that I didn't care about how it made her feel and that it triggered all of her insecurities. I tried to be patient with her because I got that she was going through something, but it was honestly starting to feel like she was blaming me for her own issues. She even went as far as saying, "You know I was supposed to be the first one to get married, right? You just had to do it before me, didn't you?" I mean, I get that she is disappointed, but at some point, it felt like she was trying to guilt-trip me for something completely out of my control. My whole life, I have been the one she compared herself to. I have had a stable relationship, got a good job, and was able to have a wedding when I wanted to. Meanwhile, she has been bouncing from one failed relationship to the next, and nothing I do seems to be good enough for her. It has always been this way. No matter what I do or achieve, it is overshadowed by what Stephanie is not able to achieve. Then, about a week later, I got an invoice in the mail. It was addressed to me by Stephanie, and it was for $5,000 worth of therapist fees. She claimed that it was the least I could do after causing her deep depression by getting married before her. I was honestly shocked. I have always tried to be supportive of Stephanie, but this felt like crossing a line. To be clear, I did not ask her to go to therapy, nor did I make her feel any sort of way about her relationship status. But somehow, in her mind, my getting married was the root cause of all of her problems. She said that my actions had shattered her self-esteem and that it was my fault she could not move on from her past relationships. I tried to talk to my parents about it. My mom, Margie, 60F, and my dad, Eugene, 60M, are really supportive of Stephanie. They have always tried to make her feel better whenever she has struggled with relationships, but honestly, they have coddled her a lot. Every time Stephanie had another breakup, they would rush in to comfort her, telling her that it was not her fault and that someone better would come along soon. But instead of helping her take accountability, it seems to have created this pattern of entitlement. When I told them about the invoice, they were not on my side. They said I was being insensitive and that I was an a-hole for not helping her out. They even went as far as to say that they were reconsidering how they raised me because I was not supporting Stephanie through this. I could not believe it. I tried to explain that this was not my fault and that it was not fair for her to ask me to pay for her therapy. I told them that Stephanie should talk to them about it because they are the ones who raised her and set these patterns of dependency and entitlement. But they just kept defending her, saying that I was being cruel and unsympathetic. The whole thing feels ridiculous, but what really bothers me is how they are treating me now. I have always been the responsible one, the one who was independent, focused on my career, and built a life that I am proud of. But instead of celebrating my marriage, my parents and Stephanie are acting like it is some sort of betrayal. It is as if I am supposed to put my life on hold to cater to her feelings. They are not even acknowledging that Stephanie has her own issues to deal with, and it is exhausting to constantly be blamed for everything in her life that is not going well. I talked to Daniel about it, and he is just as confused as I am. He told me that if the roles were reversed, he would not even think to ask someone for money for therapy, especially over something as petty as a wedding date. He is really upset about how my family is treating me too, and he says I should not have to apologize or pay for anything just because Stephanie is unhappy. But the problem is, my parents keep calling me and making me feel guilty, telling me that they do not want to pick sides, but I can tell they are more on Stephanie's side than mine. It is like they are always prioritizing her feelings over mine, and it is making me feel like I am not valued in this family. Now, Stephanie is still angry with me, and my parents are mad at me too. They keep telling me that I need to be more understanding of Stephanie's feelings, but I am honestly starting to feel like no one in my family is understanding mine. I have always tried to be there for Stephanie, and I still love her, but this whole situation is just draining me. I feel like I have reached a breaking point. I have been forced to deal with all of her drama for years, but now it is like I am being punished for something I did not do. I am not going to pay her therapy fees. She needs to deal with her own emotions and take responsibility for her actions, instead of blaming me for everything. But no one seems to understand that. So, Ida for refusing to pay for my sister's therapy fees after she blamed me for getting married before her? Update 1. Hi, here is an update on the situation. Let me start off with something I realized after everything happened. When I started dating Daniel, Stephanie seemed supportive at first. She asked questions about him and acted like she was happy for me. But she would also make small comments, like, "Are you sure you're ready for something so serious? Or you're so young, how can you know he's the one?" At the time, I thought she was just being protective. Now, I think those comments came from a different place. As Daniel and I got more serious, she started making little jokes about how she needed to get married first because the older sister should go first. I laughed it off, thinking she was not serious. But now I wonder if she really meant it. Stephanie would also say things like, "You're so lucky to have found someone already," or "I wish I could skip the dating part and just find the right guy." I did not think much of it back then, but looking back, I realized she was not as happy for me as I thought. The signs were there, but I did not notice them until it all blew up. Anyways, moving on to what happened lately. We have a family group chat, and a couple of days ago, I woke up to a massive wall of text from them. In this message, they basically accused me of ruining Stephanie's life. They started off by saying that my sister has always been there for me, that she has always looked out for me, and that my decision to get married before her was a complete betrayal. According to them, Stephanie has had such a hard time finding love, and by going ahead with my wedding, I stole her spotlight and made her feel even worse about herself. The message went on to say that it was selfish of me to have my wedding at all, and that I should have waited because the right guy for Stephanie was just around the corner. They felt that because I already had Daniel and our relationship was strong, I could have easily waited a few years to give Stephanie time to find someone and have her big moment first. Apparently, it was my responsibility as her younger sister to step aside and give her her turn. I really could not believe what I was reading. They made it sound like I was obligated to put my life on hold simply because Stephanie's relationships were not working out, as if her personal problems were somehow my fault. The entitlement in their message was unbelievable, so instead of taking part in whatever that was, I chose to ignore them. I did not respond and prayed that they would drop it. But of course, they could not tolerate being ignored. Later that day, my dad called me, and the conversation was even more infuriating than their message. He started by reiterating everything they had said in the group chat, claiming that my wedding had come as a shock to the family. He said they did not think I would go through with it so soon, and that Stephanie was blindsided. I immediately pointed out how absurd that was because I had been engaged for a year, and they were both actively involved in the entire planning process. They helped me pick the venue, gave input on decorations, and even attended some of my dress fittings. And even if this wasn't clear, they received the invitation. My dad's response? He claimed they thought I was just pre-planning for a wedding that would happen a few years down the line. I could not believe what I was hearing. Why would anyone spend a year planning a wedding they were not actually going to have? I told him that did not make any sense, but he was adamant that they had no idea I was serious about the timeline. I reminded him that he was literally with me when I signed the contract for the venue, but he just brushed it off as if that did not matter. At that point, my mom joined the call, and things went from bad to worse. She started accusing me of causing irreparable damage to the family and claimed it was entirely on me to fix it. She said my decision to get married before Stephanie had embarrassed them and made them question where they went wrong in raising me. I was shocked. My parents had saved up money for me to use for my wedding someday, but I did not even touch it. I told her that I had completely paid for my own wedding, and if they still had that money, they could use it to help Stephanie with therapy or whatever else she needed. But that was not good enough for them. They said it was not about the money and that I needed to take responsibility for the emotional harm I caused. They actually expected me to pay for Stephanie's therapy out of my own pocket as if I owed her something for simply living my life. At this point, the conversation started to sound so ridiculous that I did not know what to say anymore. My father kept saying that my wedding was a shock and that I should have waited, while my mother continued to lecture me on how I had damaged our family. It was as if they had completely altered reality to make me the villain in this ridiculous story they had created. I tried one more time to make them see logic by pointing out how unreasonable they were, but they refused to listen. They were completely convinced that I had done something wrong by getting married before Stephanie, and nothing I said would change their minds. I finally told them I could not take any more of this nonsense. I said I was done with their unreasonable behavior and cut the call. After hanging up, I immediately blocked both of their phone numbers. I also asked Daniel to block them because I did not want them to try to manipulate him into getting involved. They have not been able to contact me in the past 2 days, which has been a huge relief. I feel a little guilty for cutting them off so abruptly, but I knew I needed to preserve my peace. Their behavior has been toxic and unreasonable, and I am done messing up my mental health in order to please them. Looking back on everything, I cannot believe how far they have gone to defend Stephanie's behavior. It is as if they think the world revolves around her, and everyone else's happiness has to come second to hers. I have spent years being supportive of Stephanie through all her failed relationships, listening to her vent, and trying to be there for her, but apparently, none of that matters. The moment I decided to prioritize my own happiness, I became the villain in their eyes. And the fact that they expect me to fix this situation, one that I did not even create, is just the cherry on top. I am not sure what will happen next, or if our relationship can even be fixed. A part of me hopes that my parents could understand how unfair they have been, but another part of me wonders if this is just how things have always been, and I am only now seeing it clearly. Whatever the case may be, I am sure that I did nothing wrong in choosing to live my life and focus on my own happiness. I will not let anyone, including my family, make me feel guilty about that. Update 2. Okay, so, remember when I blocked my parents? Guess who I forgot to block? Stephanie. I completely forgot to block her. I have no clue why. I realized that around 5 days back. She called me 27 times. All after midnight. I could not believe it. I did not pick up, and I just silenced my phone, hoping she would eventually get the hint and stop calling. But of course, she did not. Daniel, on the other hand, could not put his phone on silent because he was expecting an important call from work. He was not given a specific time frame for when the call would come through, and he needed to be available. And he was also nervous about it, so he was not sure if putting his phone on silent was a good idea. So, he left his phone on loud, and Stephanie took full advantage of that. She did not stop calling. She kept calling from different numbers, trying to get through, and it got to the point where Daniel had to block her as well. But even that did not end it. She did not give up. Eventually, we reached a breaking point. I was exhausted, and Daniel was already stressed from waiting for his call, so we just gave in. I called her back, hoping to get this over with and go back to sleep. What I did not expect was the conversation that followed. As soon as she answered, it was clear she was upset. She immediately started demanding $10,000 from me. My mind went blank. She said she needed the money because she had gone to more therapy sessions, and apparently, the cost of it was adding up. I was completely taken aback. First of all, I had no idea why she was going to such an expensive therapist, especially if she could not afford it. Why wasn't she looking for someone more affordable? It did not make any sense to me. I told her, as calmly as I could manage at that point, that I was not going to give her any money. She started crying, saying how unfair everything was. She vented and ranted about how her dumb little unworthy sister had gotten married before her, and she could not believe it. She was still stuck in her failed relationships and could not move on. She kept blaming everyone else for her broken relationships, including me, the universe, and her ex-fiancés. Mario, Theo, Colin, all of them were to blame, but never Stephanie. She refused to take any responsibility for her own choices and actions. I wanted to yell at her to wake up and take control of her own life, but I just could not. At that point, I was so tired of this conversation. It was already 4 a.m., and I had no patience left. I told her I did not have the time or energy to deal with her right now and that I needed to sleep. But she would not let it go. She insisted I needed to do something because she could not afford the therapy anymore. She said that if I did not help her, the therapist might report her to the cops for financial issues. I was speechless. How could she think that I would be responsible for her choices? I told her there was literally nothing I could do to fix her problems. If she could not afford the therapy, maybe she should consider finding something more reasonable. It was such an absurd situation. I did not want to be part of it anymore. I told her flat out, this is not my problem. You should have thought about the cost before you started seeing an expensive therapist. She kept pleading with me, saying she had no other options, and that she was going to get into serious trouble. But I was done. I told her that if she called me again about this, I would contact the police before her therapist did. I knew I had to draw a line somewhere, and this felt like the only way to stop the endless cycle of drama. I did not want to get pulled into her mess anymore, especially not in the middle of the night. I blocked her number again, this time without hesitation. As soon as I hung up, I just tried to go back to bed, but I was too worked up to sleep. I kept thinking about everything Stephanie had said, and how she had placed all the blame on me, on the universe, and on everyone but herself. I had been trying to help her for so long, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. She kept asking for more, and nothing would ever fix what was wrong with her. It was exhausting, and I was just tired of being the target of her anger and jealousy. She never asked herself what went wrong. It was always someone else's fault, never hers. I tried so hard to be there for her, to offer support, but it was always on her terms. If I was not giving her exactly what she wanted, I was the bad guy. And now, after everything that happened with my wedding and everything she has done, I am just done. I cannot keep letting her treat me like this. I do not know what is going on in her life, but I am not going to keep sacrificing my own peace of mind for someone who cannot even acknowledge her own issues. I have tried, and I have been patient, but this is where I draw the line. If they reach out to me again, I honestly do not know what I will do. I am so fed up with this situation. I cannot keep being sucked into their drama, especially when it is so clear that they do not respect my boundaries or my choices. I am not sure how we got here, but I am not going back. I have made it clear that I am done, and I do not think I will ever look at my family the same way again. Update 3. It has been about 4 months since that phone call with Stephanie. After all the chaos, I genuinely thought things might be starting to settle down, but clearly, I was wrong. A few months ago, I got the terrible news that my dad had passed away. And it hit hard. The funeral was held at my parents' house, and both Daniel and I were present. I wanted to be strong for my mother, who was absolutely heartbroken. Losing Dad was something none of us could have predicted, and it was a painful reminder of how much time had passed between us, especially since things had not been going well for a while. Stephanie was also there, but she stayed in the corner with some of our relatives. She seemed really detached from everything. It was not completely unexpected, but it still felt bad. Mom was obviously a mess, and I was constantly by her side, comforting her and trying to keep everything together. Despite everything, I could not believe Stephanie's behavior. Stephanie managed to make the funeral all about herself, in spite of the fact that it was supposed to be a time for family to come together to be there for one another. Instead of reflecting on our father's life, Stephanie's sole focus seemed to be her own failed relationships. She would not stop talking about how awful her life was because of all the men she had been involved with. She was on a loop, repeating how unlucky she was, how all of these men had failed her, and now she was completely alone. It was not that I did not understand she was struggling. I did. But at Dad's funeral, in the midst of everything, it was just too much. It felt inappropriate, out of place, and completely selfish. What made it worse was that she was not just keeping her thoughts to herself. She was telling anyone who would listen, pouring her heart out to extended family members who, frankly, did not know what to say to her. It was not that they were not sympathetic, but this was not the place or time for her to unload all of her problems. I overheard a few of my uncles talking about her, calling her selfish and saying she was making the funeral all about her. They were right, and it broke my heart. Dad's funeral was supposed to be about honoring him and remembering his life, but Stephanie had managed to turn it into another one of her pity parties. Dad and I did not always get along, especially in recent years, but no matter what, I would never have disrespected him as Stephanie did at his funeral. Even though we had our differences, I still respected him enough to focus on honoring him that day. What hurt the most was that Dad always defended Stephanie, whether she was right or wrong. To see her act so selfishly at his funeral felt like the worst possible thing. After the funeral, it was just Mom, Stephanie, Daniel, and me left at the house. Mom was talking about Dad, trying to hold herself together as best as she could. I could see how hard it was for her, and I wanted to be there for her, to let her talk and share memories of Dad. But once again, Stephanie could not stop talking about herself. She started complaining about how miserable her life was, how all the men she had been involved with had ruined her, and how her life had no meaning. And I had just had enough. I do not know what triggered it, but I snapped. I called Stephanie out right then and there. I told her she had no right to make this day about her. It was my dad's funeral, and she was acting like it was just another chance to complain about her life. I said some things I should not have, but I could not keep it in any longer. It was like everything that had been building up over the years, her selfishness, her lack of accountability, the way she had always expected me to take care of her emotional mess, just exploded. To my surprise, Mom did not take Stephanie's side. She did not say anything, but she gave Stephanie this look, this expression of pure disappointment that I had never seen before. It was almost like she was finally seeing Stephanie for who she truly was, not the victim she always portrayed herself to be. And then, without another word, Mom just quietly went back to her room. Stephanie did not know how to handle that, so she started screaming at Mom, demanding that she defend her. I could not stand it anymore. I told her to stop, to back off, and leave Mom alone because she was going through enough. It was not just about Stephanie anymore. The confrontation did not end well. Stephanie was crying by the end of it, but honestly, I did not feel bad. She deserved it. She had been selfish and completely inconsiderate of the fact that we were there to mourn Dad. Instead of showing any empathy or respect, She had made the day about her, and I could not let that slide anymore. I had tried so many times to support her, to understand her, but at this point, I could not keep letting her do everything about her own struggles. I was done. It has been about a month and a half since that day, and Stephanie has been quieter. She has not made any dramatic phone calls or sent any more messages. I do not know if she is finally coming to terms with the fact that I am not going to tolerate her selfishness anymore, but I am not holding my breath. Meanwhile, I have been spending a lot of time with Mom. I know she is still struggling, and I am trying to be there for her as much as I can. She is doing her best to cope with the loss of Dad, but it is hard for all of us. The dynamics in our family have shifted, and things feel more broken than ever. Things just feel so sad now. I do not know how to fix things, or if they can even be fixed. I have reached out to Mom. I have tried to show Stephanie that I am still here, but I am not going to be a doormat anymore. I cannot keep enabling her, and I cannot keep pretending that everything is okay when it is not. I just want peace, but I am not sure if I will ever get it. For now, I will focus on supporting Mom and keeping my own life on track.